Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So guys, if I go missing, if I disappear from the subscription feed, this may well be the reason why, among other things. Maybe the KGB, or what is the corresponding SSB? Is that the SSB? The KGB or the SSB? You know, some people say I'm a sympathizer for one side or the other. Maybe they'll both just show up at my door one day and it'll be some weird Mexican standoff. Anyways, no, the big brain bureaucrats in Ottawa have hatched a new plan, and it's called Bill C-11. Corporations like the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Global News, what are some other ones? The legacy media networks are losing market share to guys like me who just tell it like it is. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying that all my ideas are 100%, which is why I disclaim. They're panicking because they are trying to maintain relevance in the era of internet. What are we at? 3.0, the social media age. And they're being cut out, and they don't like that. And for whatever reason, they have not been able to adapt to this new media environment. They haven't figured it out, even though it's pretty simple. You just tell the truth, or you speak from the heart. You speak authentically. That's all you have to do. Perhaps they don't want us to do that because perhaps they have an agenda. Perhaps there's something really insidious and draconian about what they are planning with this Bill C-11 down the road. But that said, we YouTubers can sometimes overreact. And I know what you're going to say. Well, you're naive. Maybe. But oftentimes when something gets pushed like this, whether it's a change that YouTube has made themselves or a change in the government, we go to the worst case scenario. And so the worst case scenario with this is that all of our content can be regulated by the government. If the government wants to promote a certain channel, they can do so at the push of a button, okay? This will completely destroy the YouTube experience for users, unless, of course, they just go and get a VPN and make it look like they're watching the YouTube from the United States, which is what everybody is just going to do anyways, ultimately. So this is why this is completely technologically irrelevant, because once everybody catches on to VPNs, I mean, there's still people who don't realize that if you can't watch something on Netflix in your country, get a VPN. Change your address. It can be whatever you want it to be, okay? Once people realize that, or once the big brain bureaucrats who are trying to remain relevant realize that, it's going to be, many years too late, and they're going to have regulated all this stuff basically for their own self-amusement. But here's the real reason. The real reason is that a lot of the legacy media is losing market share. Now, here's why they're saying they're doing it. They're saying that they're doing it because they want to promote nationalist media which embraces the Canadian experience, because our experience is so unique. What is unique about our experience? If anything, we are a global village. We are literally a cross-section of the entire planet. If you go to Toronto, the most diverse place on the planet, with people from all walks of life, from all over the world, you're going to tell me there's something uniquely Canadian about that, aside from the fact that, everybody is enjoying democracy and the ability to come together in a relatively free market and try to thrive and be successful? Well, I guess we can't celebrate that anymore, can we? Because now they want to control what people see, and explicitly. Now I'm hoping that we are jumping the gun and it's not as insidious as it seems. I'm hoping that we as YouTubers who are talking about this are just overreacting. Maybe these changes that are going to come are probably going to come 10 years from now, and they're going to be few and far between, because let's face it, the government is incompetent at the best of times. So their ability to effectively regulate something like this and manage this volume of content, it's going to be very difficult. Now, if they go the route of requiring certification for each video, and I think they're going to realize rather quickly that you're going to need a massive army of people to do that. So I don't think that it's feasible or realistic for them to have this process by which you have to submit your content to see if it is going to be approved on YouTube. I don't think that that is going to take shape anytime soon. Perhaps they'll work with YouTube down the road to create some sort of algorithm that might determine if your content is Canadian enough to be put in front of eyeballs. Not that I think they care about whether or not it's Canadian. I think it's more about shaping certain narratives. And I want people to understand that this is completely apolitical, because at some point in time, the tables are going to turn in our political spectrum. Just like the tables have turned here in our province, which used to be very, very strongly NDP, New Democratic, very leftist and progressive. The tables turned. Now we are a strongly very conservative province, among the most conservative in the country, arguably, even more so than Alberta. And Alberta was, referred to as the Texas of Canada. Now Saskatchewan, I guess we're like the Montana. Ultimately, the tables can turn. And when that happens, be aware. You may be cheerleading this right now because you think, yay, we're going to promote, if you're a progressive person, you're saying we're going to promote the NDP and the liberal political platform, and we're going to make, the world a more liberal, progressive place. Okay, there's certain aspects. I'm a moderate. You guys know that. We don't make politically provocative content. We're right down the middle here. We try to view things on an even-keeled basis. But at some point, the other side is going to win, and then they're going to have those powers at their disposal. Because what's likely going to happen if you go to such an extreme where you try to explicitly regulate all the content, people are going to find ways around it, and something else is just going to emerge, and you are going to effectively kill that platform. People are, you cannot change a whole generation of people who are now trained to consume at will whatever they want, whatever type of information they want, being exposed to a plethora of various ideas. You cannot kill that. You can try to corral people into a certain place, but it will fail. It will ultimately fail, and something new will emerge. Some decentralized platform is right around the corner. Like I said, VPNs allow people to bypass this bullshit anyways. But the concern here is, of course, for all of the people who you guys like to watch. Now, I'm called the Canadian Prepper. So, because of the general incompetency of government, they'll probably first go by the name of the channel or some really, trivial thing, right? Oh, he has Canadian in his name. Okay, boost him. Well, guess what? Just because your channel gets boosted under this new policy, and look, it's a stretch because what we're saying here all revolves around whether or not the government's actually going to target YouTube content creators. It's a big leap from what the bill actually says, even though it would totally permit them to do that in a legal sense. I'm assuming, even though they have on record stated that it's not for the purpose of doing that. So they will be held to account in some respect. However, that said, it can be interpreted that way. Okay, so the fact, maybe by virtue of the fact that I have the word Canadian in my channel name, maybe that's enough to make it so that I qualify as promoting nationalistic content. Even though I think the utter insanity of promoting nationalism at a time where we're supposed to be coming together as a globe, especially in light of what is happening right now with the decoupling between East and West. Aren't we supposed to be embracing this new world of, I almost said New World Order. I didn't mean it like that. I know. I'm on your side. Trust me. How do I phrase this? We're supposed to be, on the one hand, embracing other cultures, embracing, just coming together as a species. This is supposed to be a new era for humanity, so to speak. And yet we're clinging to this archaic method of media control, which, may have been relevant in the past when Canadians arguably weren't at the cultural forefront, okay? But on YouTube, Canadians are disproportionately represented in terms of their cultural influence. So there are way more Canadian YouTubers per capita in the high subscriber counts and the high view counts than all of the rest of the world. I can't understand the reasoning for this. I can't understand the rationale other than some insidious draconian purpose of trying to control what people think. I mean, that's immediately what people are going to go to. A lot of YouTubers won't say that because they're trying to keep it civil, but they're not preppers. Again, we're not saying anything provocative on the channel. We're just saying that's what it looks like. The thing is, if you're good at what you do, and if Canadian culture, or what we view Canadian culture as, which is entirely subjective, especially considering the history of this country, and a lot of the history which is mired in controversy. We'll just leave it at that. There's a lot to be celebrated, but there's a lot to be criticized as well. I don't think a lot of the things that we share are necessarily distinctly Canadian. I mean, how much can you evolve a culture in only 150 years? Especially when it's a blend of all these different ethnicities and, cultures that were brought in this melting pot, multicultural sort of way. What are we really celebrating here? So if anything, YouTube itself, just being run as it is in most cases, it's the best representation of what Canadian culture is about, because we're already at the forefront of the platform. We're already promoting Canadian viewpoints and ideas. We're not calling them Canadian viewpoints and ideas, but that's what they are. If you have, 1,000 YouTubers with over 1 million subs and they're from Canada, maybe they're not saying at the beginning of every video, hey, I'm a Canadian and this is my experience, but they're sharing their ideas, which stem from this open, democratic culture, which are influencing the world in a constructive way. Because we know that YouTube already strongly regulates the type of content that can be parlayed on here. So if you're promoting, really shady ideas, or if you're, provoking any sort of radical ideas which could lead to, just bad stuff happening, YouTube regulates that. So that YouTube already polices their own platform. They don't need the government to come in and do that. So the only reason I can see them doing that, or doing what they want to do, which this bill is going to be passed apparently within the next week or so, is for their own purpose. But I will say, watch out, because someday that same tool will be used by your political opponents against you. And the tables will turn, just like they turned here in our province. The tables turn. We used to be very liberal, if you want to call it liberal, progressive. Now we're the complete opposite. And the tables will turn on a federal stage once again. They will. They always do. The tables always turn. And those same tools that you implement will be used against you someday. Okay? And they may just be used to criticize this bill. You know what I'm saying? Like think about how it could potentially backfire. Someday when the Conservatives get into office, if they have complete control over what Canadians see, or what Canadians who have no technical capabilities and don't know what a VPN is can see, then, they're going to be able to criticize the bill and have a disproportionate amount of content that criticizes that bill pushed in front of people's eyeballs, saying that, oh, that's Canadian view. So anyways, guys, get a VPN, because that's the easy way around any of this. And that's why this is completely redundant anyways, because some form of decentralized media is going to come and completely change the game. Anyways, this is just going to expedite that process. Now, what you can do is there's a link below. You can click it, and it's going to do a lot of the work for you. It's an automatic letter that will be sent, and it's just going to, keep the pressure on them to do the right thing, to not misuse this new power that they've granted themselves. I think what they really want to do is ensure that the legacy media networks are getting pumped on the platform, which, to be brutally honest, they already are anyways. Google already pumps CTV, CBC, Global News. So they're already pumping the mainstream media networks, the Canadian mainstream media networks. So they don't even need that in the first place. In fact, this will backfire, because what's going to happen, even if I have the word Canadian in my name on YouTube, they're going to show my channel to people who perhaps don't want to watch this type of content, okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to shorten my watch time. And when you have shorter amounts of watch time on a video, it actually leads to YouTube promoting that video less and less. And a lot of our sponsors, a lot of our audience, like 65% of the audience is from the USA. And that's by virtue of the fact that our message is quite universal. And I think the Canadian message is very universal. So this whole notion of nationalism and this need for nationalism in the first place, I would challenge whether that's even necessary at all this day and age. When by virtue of us being like the de facto content creators, this universal democratic perspective, okay, which is all inclusive and evolved, technologically and just, I would say very culturally eclectic already. Do we really need? I think it's a step back in a lot of ways. I don't think it's Canadian. It's definitely not Canadian. It's more like Soviet, if anything, ironically, or Maoist, I guess you could say. So anyways, guys, if I go missing, that's the reason why. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the government is not going to, force themselves in right away, because they're going to realize that the volume of content that they would actually have to regulate is just too vast. I mean, they're not going to be able to deal with, hundreds of requests to upload videos from each content creator, or even like, a dozen, let's say at one Canadian YouTuber, of which there's probably 1 million Canadians on YouTube making videos. And imagine how many people you would have to employ to certify every video, to watch every video. Not even YouTube can do that. That's why they have algorithms. You only get a human review. You have to go through many, many hoops. If you get a video demonetized, you have to appeal it, and then the algorithm checks again, I think, and then you can finally go get a human review, and they'll just jump to the one part of the video that the algorithm picked up on. They'll disregard the rest of the video because these guys got thousands of videos that they have to watch, and I'm sure they have some kind of quota that they have to get through. So they're not watching your entire video. So for somebody to label a video Canadian or not, I mean, there's such a huge gray area there, and it's so ambiguous and open-ended. Like, what are they going to base that on? What is the criteria going to be? Is it just in the name of the video itself? Do you just have to have Canadian in the title? Is that going to, there's got to be some, there's going to be some really easy way to work around. Just like one of those old video games where there's easy, simple cheat. Like, it seems like they're not going to be able to pull off what a lot of people are fearing, because the manpower required to do such a thing. Now, the only thing that it might do is kill a huge source of income tax revenue for the government. Because if they do go that route and they do try to regulate YouTube, and they do say that every video you upload, you need to, because there's this whole thing where people are concerned that you're going to have to request, I can't remember what it is, like some sort of license or review of your content to ensure that it meets all the criteria to be considered Canadian. And that whole process is obviously, that would take weeks, months, because they just simply don't have the manpower to do that for a fraction. Because think about it, every video would have to be watched. That means one person could maybe get through on a good day, 30 videos, 40 videos, having to watch them front to back. And those are short videos, okay? There are millions of videos uploaded by Canadians every day. It would just be impossible. You could not hire enough people to do it. So I'm calling bullshit on them immediately jumping into some draconian thing. But what I will say is that YouTube is going to bat for content creators, which makes me wonder, because very seldom will YouTube join in protest to the point where they're making their own generated content, their own professional content, condemning this Bill C-11. Okay? So it makes me wonder, either this is really bad, or YouTube is concerned that it could potentially benefit, you know, some Canadian content creators. I don't know. I really don't know, but it doesn't sound good on its face, and it looks pretty bad. So if I go missing, that's why. There's other ways to find us. You know, we do have a Patreon, but you know, I haven't really went that route yet. I don't want a paywall for this stuff. You know, what I would say is if you guys don't like the ads, go and get YouTube Premium. I mean, it's $10 a month. For the amount that some of you guys watch YouTube, you cannot tell me that you are getting a better bang for your buck in terms of the time spent on YouTube than $10 a month. I mean, you think about how much you pay to go to the movies. What, like nowadays, like really realistically, you do the popcorn, the whole 9 yards. We're talking 30 to 50 bucks minimum. And that's just by yourself. And let's face it, we're preppers, so we're going by ourselves. And the irony of this is that, you know, what makes Canada great is the freedom component. Without that, you know, what is there to embrace? Cold weather, Tim Hortons, maple syrup, all the stereotypes. Thanks for watching, guys. Canadian Prepper out.